are live and we actually have audio now. For those of you who are waiting in silence, I'm sorry we had a little audio issue there. I do think it is fixed now. It looks like the audio input settings are also a little bit low on the intake side. How interesting is that? All right. Well, welcome in. If you are new here, my name is Dr. Matt, and I'm one of the most experienced MCAT tutors in the country. And I've been offering med school coaching for a long time, helping people to conquer one of the hardest entrance exams in the country, and one of the most interesting sort of application journeys in the country as people work their way into med school. So we will rock and roll. We're only going to be on probably I'm guessing 10 or 15 minutes today. Got a pretty hopping busy day. And yeah, you guys drop those questions here. Let me jump over to the YouTube side for 1 second and make sure that we did not leave any kind of audio blank live session rolling over there. And when you guys get those questions in, let me know what your questions are about the MCAT and getting into med school. Let me leave a little instruction comment here as well. Drop your MCAT and Premed questions here. Only on for a few minutes today, so drop those questions fast. Here we go. Jump over to the YouTube side here. Awesome. All right, guys. As you are getting ready to take the MCAT, I always like to know what percentage of your day, if you are in study mode, what percentage of your day is actually studying, and what percentage of your day is saying you're studying but doing other either med school related stuff or not med school related stuff. I love to know also how many of you guys are actually full-time students versus part-time students. It is really, really helpful to know kind of whether the audience is mostly, traditional versus non-traditional. Leo drops a question on the TikTok side asking, what is your best strategy for cars? So Leo, thank you for the question. I appreciate the question. And cars is my favorite section. I really like the cars section. It is awesome. Everybody should love the cars section because you don't have to know any content. And I know you guys already know this, but the reason that this is really important, and I think it's a reason that I think it's something that not enough people, welcome you guys on the YouTube side. It's something that I think not enough people are utilizing for their own sort of best practices. And it is that they have to actually give you an objective reason why every single answer that is right, and an objective reason why every single answer that is wrong is not right. And by wrong, I don't mean factually wrong. I think one of the confusing things for people about the cars section is that statements on the cars section can actually be true statements. They can even be true and be claimed by the actual exam passage itself. And that doesn't matter. What matters is that it be true and be answering the question prompt. And so if there is one thing I think every student studying for the MCAT should do on the car section, it has become a little bit more aware of how hyper specific the cars question prompts are on the MCAT. So if they ask you in this question, historian Smith argued that the 18th century women's suffrage movement was motivated primarily by an interest in blank, you should probably notice that they're giving you a very specific authorial attribution, meaning they actually said this person's opinion, this historian named Smith. And then they also connected it to a very specific claim, right? The women's suffrage movement in the 18th century. There's a really narrow bandwidth on that question. Those kinds of sort of parameters that they give you on the question prompts on the MCAT automatically rule out oftentimes 2 or even 3 of the potential answer choices. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times people glaze through it and they're like, it was something about the women's suffrage movement. And then they pick a random, often true, but a random true statement from that topic rather than that really narrowly defined question prompt about whose opinion was it and when was it and what were they talking about. All right, Adan says, would you use Anki for studying? I have very mixed feelings about using Anki for studying for the MCAT, and I'll give you guys kind of a little bit of an explanation for why I say that. And the main thing is that the Anki decks are good insofar as you are learning something that is an association with a term or a topic where instant recall has a good payout. And what I mean by that is, if you need, for example, to know that, like, if you see like force equation involving mass, and you're like, okay, or force equation involving mass and gravity. If you flip the card over and it's like F equals G M1 M2 over R squared. And you're like, yeah, I need to memorize that. And I flip it a few times until I have it. That is totally fine to get that from a card, from an Anki deck. Now, should I expect to be able to solve problems on the MCAT using the fact that I did a deck that had that going and had that equation there? Not necessarily. And I think that's the weakness that a lot of students leave with, is they don't actually do enough problems to get used to applying the stuff they learned on their Anki deck. And if you leave it there, you're not going to be ready for the actual MCAT if that's where you leave it. So I hope that is helpful, guys. I do have to run, so I'm going to leave it up for probably about 30 seconds. Any other questions, I will try to jump on, and then we will kind of jump out of here for today. All right, and we'll go ahead and call time there. Thank you guys so much for joining. And if you need help on the MCAT, don't forget MCATboss.com. Again, I'm Dr. Matt. I am the founder of MCATboss.com. And if you need help on the MCAT or planning your interviews or your applications for med school, let me know.